Part 3. The signals of the Ichimoku Kinko Hyo system. What are the signals that we could trade off and profit from? The Ichimoku Kinko Hyo system gives you 5 kinds of signals. They should never be taken in isolation, but considered in the context of the overall chart and with regards to the relationships between all of the elements, including the price. Remember that Ichimoku is useful in assessing trend strength and trend reversals. However, trends can and do change, so your readings of the charts should be taken as a probability rather than a certainty. The signals could be classified as strong, neutral, or weak, depending on their location with respect to the Kumo. The strength of the signals could also be further strengthened, weakened, or nullified by the relationships between other elements. When used in a non-trending environment, such as in a sideways trend, Ichimoku is likely to produce frequent conflicting signals. The Tenkan-sen crossover signal. This occurs when the Tenkan-sen crosses the Kijunsen. These crossovers could be bullish or bearish. A bullish crossover happens when the Tenkan-sen crosses from below to above the Kijunsen. In this chart, there was a Tenkan-sen bullish crossover that resulted in a strong uptrend. A strong bullish signal is produced if the crossover happens above the Kumo. With a strong bullish signal, price is likely to trend up on strong momentum after the crossover. A neutral bullish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kumo. This chart shows a crossover inside the Kumo. Because the signal was a neutral bullish signal, the price hesitated and retested the bottom Kumo before proceeding to a strong breakout. From its crossover, the price rose on strong momentum within a few weeks. A weak bullish signal is produced if the Tenkan-sen crossover happens below the Kumo. After a weak bullish signal was produced, price broke out of the Kumo top but did not make a strong uptrend immediately. Price went down and retested the Kumo top once again as support, and then it resumed its uptrend. To summarize our lesson on Tenkan-sen bullish crossovers, a bullish signal occurs when the Tenkan-sen crosses from below to above the Kijunsen. A strong bullish signal is produced if the signal happens above the Kumo. A neutral bullish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kumo. A weak bullish signal is produced if the signal happens below the Kumo. Now let's talk about Kijunsen bearish crossovers. A bearish crossover happens when price breaks below the Kijunsen. A bearish signal occurs when the Tenkan-sen crosses from above to below the Kijunsen. A strong bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kumo. This chart shows a neutral bearish signal when the Tenkan-sen crossed below the Kijunsen inside the Kumo. A weak bearish signal is produced if the Tenkan-sen crossover happens above the Kumo. This resulted in a weak sideways movement thereafter. Tenkan-sen bearish crossover summary. A bearish signal occurs when the Tenkan-sen crosses from above to below the Kijunsen. A strong bearish signal is produced if the signal happens below the Kumo. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the signal happens inside the Kumo, and a weak bearish signal is produced if the signal happens above the Kumo. Now let's talk about the next Ichimoku signal, the Kijunsen crossover. A Kijunsen crossover happens when the price crosses the Kijunsen line from above or below. A bullish crossover happens when the price crosses above the Kijunsen line. Here are examples of Kijunsen bullish crossovers. A strong bullish signal occurs when the cross is above the Kumo. The price bounced off the Kumo top and then broke above the Kijunsen line. As long as price stays above the Kijunsen, this is still medium-term bullish. A neutral bullish signal occurs when the cross is inside the Kumo. A weak bullish signal occurs when the cross is below the Kumo. So in summary, a bullish signal occurs when the price crosses from below to above the Kijunsen. A strong bullish signal is produced if the cross happens above the Kumo. A neutral bullish signal is produced if the cross happens inside the Kumo. And a weak bullish signal is produced if the cross happens below the Kumo. Now let's talk about Kijunsen bearish crossovers. A bearish crossover happens when price breaks below the Kijunsen. The bearish signal is strong when price breaks below the Kijunsen while it is below the Kumo. The bearish signal is neutral when the price went below the Kijunsen while it is inside the Kumo. The bearish signal is weak when the crossover happens below the Kijunsen while price is above the Kumo. In summary, a bearish signal occurs when the price crosses from above to below the Kijunsen. A strong bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens below the Kumo. A neutral bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens inside the Kumo. And a weak bearish signal is produced if the crossover happens above the Kumo. The third Ichimoku signal is the Chikou span crossover. A Chikou span crossover happens when the Chikou span crosses above or falls below the price. A bullish signal occurs when the Chikou span crosses above the price. A bearish signal occurs when the Chikou span crosses below the price. A strong bullish signal happens if the Chikou span crosses above the price while the current price is above the Kumo. This chart shows the strong bullish signal. Strong signals give you a higher likelihood of a successful breakout because there is no Kumo resistance stopping the price. A neutral bullish signal happens if the Chikou span crosses above the price while the current price is inside the Kumo. While the crossover could be bullish, price has no clear trend inside the Kumo. A weak bullish signal happens if the Chikou span crosses above the price while the current price is below the Kumo. If the Kumo is thicker, then that is an even stronger resistance to break. A strong bearish signal happens if the Chikou span crosses below the price while the current price is below the Kumo. A neutral bearish signal happens if the Chikou span crosses below the price while the current price is inside the Kumo. A weak bearish signal happens when the Chikou span crosses below the price while the current price is above the Kumo. Now let's talk about Kumo breakouts. A Kumo breakout happens when price crosses above or below the Kumo. A bullish Kumo breakout occurs if price breaks above the Kumo. A bearish Kumo breakout occurs if price breaks below the Kumo. A bullish Kumo breakout alone is not the only condition for a successful breakout. The other elements of the Ichimoku system must also provide bullish signals. So what are the conditions for a successful breakout? First, price breaks above the Kumo with a single candle. Second, price closes above the Kijunsen. Third, a bullish Kumo twist. Fourth, the Chikou span should be above the price. Fifth, a Tenkan-sen bullish crossover. In the same way, a bearish Kumo breakout is not the only condition for a successful bearish breakout. What are the conditions for a successful bearish breakout? First, price breaks below the Kumo with a single candle. Second, price closes below the Kijunsen. Third, a bearish Kumo twist. Fourth, the Chikou span is below the price. Fifth, the Tenkan-sen bearish crossover. Next, we will talk about Kumo twists. A Kumo twist happens when the Senko span A and B change positions. If the Senko span A moves above Senko span B, then there's a possible change in sentiment from bearish to bullish. If Senko span A moves below Senko span B, then there's a possible change in sentiment from bullish to bearish. I'd like to present a case study that shows the difference between using Ichimoku Kinko Hyo system versus moving averages and technical indicators. Here's a chart that contains moving averages, the relative strength index, and the MACD indicators. So if you weren't an Ichimoku user yet at this time, you probably would have a candlestick chart loaded, and you had the RSI and the MACD. You also had the moving averages. So for example, you bought at this price point because you saw that price was going up. It had been making higher highs and higher lows. Then on the following days, price stopped going up and started to move sideways. You realize that you're stuck inside this consolidation box and you have no idea where price will be going in the short or medium term. The moving averages gave 3 bullish crossovers or buy signals within the box. Each time price made that buy signal or the moving averages did a bullish crossover, you thought that you will finally be able to profit from this trade as it resumes its uptrend. Sadly, the price has remained sideways for 7 months. The RSI also remained range-bound. The question on your mind was until when you will have to hold the stock inside this consolidation pattern. Finally, after the long wait, price made a bullish crossover once again, and you assumed that this will again be a false signal and you did not want to stay any longer. So you took the rising price as an opportunity to sell or at least break even on the trade. After selling, you felt a sense of relief that you were able to get out at minimal or no losses at all. However, shortly after selling, the price breaks above its box consolidation. You hesitate to buy because on its price breakout, there was no RSI breakout. The MACD seemed flat and gave conflicting buy and sell signals. You are not sure whether to enter the trade, so you just let it go. In this confusion and hesitation, price easily doubled. However, at the price highs, a bearish divergence was spotted, and then price had corrected back down since. Now let's look at the same period on the same chart using Ichimoku Kinko Hyo. Let's go back to number 1. So you bought at this price level, but Chikou span made lower highs and could have told you that the current trend is sideways. You sold at this level, but Chikou span made higher highs and could have told you that this is a real breakout, and the Tenkan-sen crossover above the Kumo could have told you that this is a strong bullish signal. Now you hesitated at this point, but the Kumo twist could have told you ahead of time that the sentiment is now bullish. You hesitated to enter here, all the way to the peak, but the Kijunsen could have told you that it is medium-term bullish. So had you known how to use Ichimoku from the start, you would have avoided all the drama that came with not knowing what the market would do, because Ichimoku is able to provide you with an analysis of price action with regards to past, present, and future direction. Ichimoku tells you the following things. First, the current trend. This boxed area is the same consolidation box in the traditional chart shown earlier. In Ichimoku, This range is defined by the Chikou span or the green line. Second, the trigger for the change in trend. The Chikou span breakout and the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen crossover above the Kumo is the trigger. Third, the timing of the future trend. Fourth, the strength of the trend that followed. Ichimoku is able to give you a roadmap for future prices as well as the timing for the change in trend. It lets you prepare so that you are able to accumulate shares as the Ichimoku signals become more favorable and to hold your shares when the market is about to go your way. So Ichimoku users do not simply react to crossovers made by moving averages or signals given by indicators. Ichimoku users are able to plan ahead and find trades that are likely to bring profits based on the strength of the signals on the Ichimoku chart. Now let's dig deeper into the signals that led us to believe that price would trend strongly as it did for the past month. I will draw the box only to show you which part of the trend we talked about in the previous slide. We draw ranges using the Chikou span line or the green line. Within the consolidation, we see that price had been consolidating above the Kumo. However, the Chikou span tells us that it was in a sideways trend because the Chikou span could not go above the prices. It had been trending inside the price range, but it was still within the range set by the historical Chikou span range. The Chikou span finally broke out of the range here. Now let's go to the candlestick that corresponds to the Chikou span that broke above its range. This is the candle because we counted 26 candles forward to identify which candlestick the Chikou span represented. Now the Kumo twist warns us of a change in sentiment. If the Kumo turns green, then we expect a bullish future. If it turns red, we expect a bearish future. Take a look at this Kumo here. It is red and is therefore bearish. However, at this area, a Kumo twist happened. The Kumo turned from red to green, thus the sentiment is about to turn bullish. The Chikou span represents the price 26 periods back, so we count forward to know at what price it was when Chikou span broke above the Chikou span range. It was this candle here, number 26. Notice that the Chikou span broke out before prices even broke out of its box. We get the signal earlier. Now, not only does the Chikou span tell you that the breakout will occur, the Kumo twist also tells you that a new trend is about to begin. Now let's look at the Ichimoku elements within the Apple chart. The stock price of Apple made a phenomenal move. Now, if you were able to spot the Ichimoku Kinko Hyo elements and how they were able to predict this strong bullish move, then you would have benefited from this trend. So what are the conditions for a successful breakout? First is the Tenkan-sen crossover. Second, the Kijunsen crossover. Third, Chikou span crossover. Fourth, a Kumo breakout. And the fifth, Kumo twist. Notice that while prices were still at its lows, the Kumo twist had already warned of a change in sentiment from bearish to bullish. So you would have been able to speculate on this because all 5 bullish signals were present on the chart. So from here, if we count 26 periods back, we would have been able to buy at the start of the trend. After that strong run-up, price consolidated again. Notice how price was stuck between the Chikou span lines. These Chikou span lines created price ranges that served as support and resistance lines. Then price broke out of its range. The Chikou span also broke above the price range, which confirms its bullishness. Note that breakouts often happen after price touches the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen lines and uses them as bounce point for the breakout. Thus, breakouts will not happen in cases where the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen are severely detached from each other. Price has to restore equilibrium before it can execute a successful breakout. This is why consolidations are important. Price made successive breakouts afterwards. After prices bounced on top of the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen lines, it made strong moves upward. Now at this point, the move was overextended. The Tenkan-sen was drastically detached from the Kijunsen line. This is what we call the C pattern. Essentially, when price makes a strong upward movement, the Tenkan-sen tends to diverge from the Kijunsen line so that we get a gap in the shape of a letter C. The Tenkan-sen is way up and the Kijunsen is way below, and when that happens, the gap is closed in two ways. First, the price corrects back down. Second, the price moves sideways until the Kijunsen is able to catch up. What happened was the first when the price made a strong drop. Equilibrium was restored as the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen closed its huge gap. Price bounced slightly, but another gap occurred between the Tenkan-sen and the Kijunsen. The Tenkan-sen dropped below the Kijunsen significantly, forming another C pattern. Naturally, price had to correct itself again to restore equilibrium, and after that consolidation, it was able to form a strong base that caused another breakout. The Chikou span also broke above its range. We see the same Ichimoku signals in the chart of Google as we did in the chart of Apple. The order in which the signals occur is not that important, but it is important that these elements come together to show the trend. In this chart, in number 1, the Kumo twist happened. Since the Kumo is plotted 26 periods ahead, we count back and see that the change in sentiment occurred here. The Kumo breakout happened, and then the Chikou span broke above the price. The Kijunsen also crossed above the price, plus the Tenkan-sen crossed above the Kijunsen. The price trended strongly afterwards. Price trended above the Tenkan-sen and then corrected back to the Kijunsen lines along that trend. So the medium-term trend here was bullish because price had been bouncing above the Kijunsen. We see the same signals in the chart of Tesla Corporation. There's a Kumo twist at this area. Then the rest of the bullish signals happened. There was a Kumo breakout, Chikou span crossover, Kijunsen crossover, a Tenkan-sen crossover. So the Kumo twist that warned of a change in trend from bullish to bearish happened at this area. After this, prices trended above the Tenkan-sen and Kijunsen lines. Price trended above the Tenkan-sen line, showing strong momentum at this area. The price hardly touched the Kijunsen, so it used the Tenkan-sen as the support line. Price moved sideways, and then we see prices breaking above the range once again, and a strong trend occurred above the Tenkan-sen once again. Finally, price reached its peak at around $1,200 and then moved sideways. Price broke below the Tenkan-sen and the Kijunsen lines and started creating a triangle pattern. So at this point, the price started moving sideways after it reached that peak of 1200 levels. So you cannot use the Ichimoku as an indicator at this area because price is moving sideways. Ichimoku is best for trend trading strategies. So the last chart we will study today is the chart of Bitcoin. This chart shows a part of the Bitcoin chart. This one shows the Ichimoku signals that were revealed when Bitcoin was at 11,000. So you have the Kumo twist, then you have the Kumo breakout, there's a Chikou span crossover, a Kijunsen crossover, and also a Tenkan-sen crossover. These bullish signals were found when price broke above the 11,000 level, and then price moved on to make higher highs. This is the daily chart that shows what happened after Ichimoku gave the buy signals for Bitcoin at 11,000. Price moved strongly up to the 39,500 levels. It was trending above the Tenkan-sen line, and it only once revisited the Kijunsen line. So you would have been able to profit from this immensely if only you held Bitcoin using Ichimoku, because the price never broke below the Kijunsen line from 11,000 to 39,500 levels. So using the Kijunsen line as your stop loss, you would have still been in the trade because it did not break below that Kijunsen line. Now after price peaked at 39,500, price broke below the Tenkan-sen line. The Tenkan-sen was at the 36,000 level at this point. So you would have been out of the trade there if you were a momentum trader. And then if you used the Kijunsen line as your support, you would have been able to stay in the trade. There was another slight bounce towards the 39,500 level, and then it broke below the Tenkan-sen level once again. If you use the Kijunsen as your stop loss, you would have gotten out of the trade at this 32,000 level, where price made a long bearish candlestick and broke below the Kijunsen. So the Ichimoku signals were enough to tell you what to do with your Bitcoin trade. So price reached a peak of about 64,000 and then started hesitating. It started to give bearish signals using Ichimoku. What are these bearish signals? What are the conditions for a bearish breakout using Ichimoku? First is a Kumo twist. This time, the Kumo has to twist from a green Kumo to a red Kumo. The Senko B should go above the Senko A line to create a bearish red Kumo. And then there's a Kijunsen crossover wherein the price should break below. Thank you for watching part 3 of this Ichimoku Kinko Hyo webinar series. Please don't forget to check out part 4, Trading Strategies.